Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. I'm your host, Ariane Aaron Bureau. Today's guest is Molly Penney, a lifelong Alaskan and a mom of two who has a passion for helping babies and children sleep better. She is Alaska's premier certified pediatric sleep consultant, helping bring much-needed services to her fellow Alaskans. So please welcome to the podcast, Molly Penney. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I know we've done a story in the past, and this was such a fantastic and interesting, eye-opening story. So I'm really excited that you're here today for our viewers and audience to dive more into this.
Great, yes.
Well, before we kind of get into all of that, just tell us a little bit more about yourself, mom life. How old are your kiddos, and how that's been going?
Yes, so I have two children. My oldest is 4.5, and my youngest is 17 months. So I have the older toddler and the new toddler.
It's a mix. I bet you're busy.
Yes, I like to say I'm very needed right now by them. And of course, when I had my oldest son, he didn't sleep, like all babies don't sleep. And that's kind of what got me interested in the whole world of baby and children's sleep. So I've kind of been researching this for the last 4 years since having him, and, really took it to the next level and got a certification so that I could help other people that are struggling with their kids' sleep.
I love that. All right. So you kind of talked to us about why you got into this field. So what does a sleep consultant do?
So basically what I do is I work with parents one-on-one, and I speak with them, get all of the issues that they're dealing with their particular child's sleep. We work together to come up with a schedule for the kid and some goals for the child. And then there's kind of like 3 facets to how I help them improve their child's sleep. So we work on schedule is the biggest one, what time they're going to wake up, what time the naps are, what time they're going to go to bed, and kind of routines with those. We also work on the environment that the kid is sleeping in. So is it dark enough? Is it quiet? Are they sleeping in their own bed? Do they share a bed with a sibling? All these different things. And then the last biggest part is, can they put themselves to sleep? And that's kind of what ties it all together. So that self-settling ability. So I work with clients on a 2-week basis, and we get all of that down pat and help their kids sleep better at the end.
I bet they're loving you. I'd love to hear some success stories a little bit later on. Talk about some of the common ages where you see sleep issues arise, or families kind of will start to go, oh, this is, maybe we need to bring in a sleep consultant.
Absolutely. So anybody who's had a newborn probably knows they start out really sleepy. And in the beginning, they will kind of just sleep wherever. And they sleep a lot. They need like 21 hours of sleep a day.
Yes, that's how my daughter was. I was like, I had to call my pediatrician.
Yeah.
I was like, is this normal? And they're like, is she eating? I'm like, yeah. Like, is she seem fine? I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, congratulations.
Just leave her. Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah. So in the beginning, you're like, oh, this mom life isn't so bad. They just sleep all day. And, I just go about my life.
Yep.
And then kind of around 4 to 5 months, they seem to have this time where they wake up. And they can't fall asleep so easily anymore, and they can't sleep in the middle of the living room, and they don't take 100 naps a day. And so around like 5 months is when I get a lot of my clients, because suddenly the parents, especially as a first-time mom, you're like, what on earth do I do now? Yeah, what happened? Is my baby broken?
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of parents then. Another big transition is kind of when they drop down to 1 nap, which is around like 14 months. So people are trying to get on a schedule, which they'll keep for the next 2 years. So they're trying to sort out that. And then kind of an uncommon age that people don't think of when it comes to sleep consulting is toddlers. So I actually get more toddler clients than I do babies, which you wouldn't think, but 2.5 to 3.5 is a big one. And there's a lot of things that happen around that age. Some kids have been moved to toddler beds, maybe prematurely.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've dropped a nap. Sometimes they're doing overnight potty training. They're going to preschool. There's all these things that happen around that age. And it becomes really tough for parents. These kids can now get out of bed and walk out the door.
Come knock right on your door. Hey, I'm up.
Yes. And so that opens up a whole new can of worms, and they can talk. They can say mama, all these things. So that's another common age that I work with is those preschool age toddlers.
That makes sense. You said 3 things that help almost every child sleep better. So I know ears are perking up.
Right.
What
I would say
that?
there are 3 guaranteed things that will help any child sleep better. Number 1 is darkness, especially in Alaska in the summer, like right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, kids go into a naturally light stage of sleep between 5 and 6 a.m. So if during that time there's light in their room, they'll pop right awake. And as we know, living here, it's broad daylight at that time of day. So having a really good blackout curtain will save you a lot of sleep. Secondly, using white noise. Even with older kids, I mean, they like that consistent white noise at a loud volume through the night.
Yeah.
And the third would be an early bedtime. A lot of people think
that's what it was.
Yeah.
You were saying an early. Please touch on that.
Yeah.
That was one of the things because people think I'm going to keep my kid.
Yes.
They're going to tire out, and
Yeah.
that has the reverse effect.
It has the reverse effect.
So interesting.
Kids are so strange like that. A lot of times, the earlier you put them to sleep, the later they'll sleep in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of because once it gets to a later time at night, like past 8 o'clock, their cortisol levels start to spike, and they get kind of jacked up for the night. And we see that as, oh, they're not tired, they can stay up, but really, they're kind of past the point of no return with tiredness.
Gotcha.
So most children can go to sleep around 7 o'clock at night. Between 7 and 8, I feel like, is a good range, even with a 4 or 5-year-old. And they'll sleep until 6 or 7 in the morning, and they need that sleep. They need 11 or 12 hours of sleep, to feel their best. And so it's really important to put them to sleep early when you can. I mean, it's hard here, it's still the middle of the day. We're still doing all these activities late at night, but making effort to get them into bed early makes their mood better, makes your mood better, really sets you on track for a good day.
What do you say to those who, like, they need that complete darkness? It helps, but they're a little bit afraid, like low light and, night lights. Is that going to interrupt it, or that just kind of takes some time to get used to?
I always tell people skip the night light if you can.
Okay.
Really avoid it, especially with a younger toddler. An elementary school kid, fine. I mean, they kind of have mastered their ability to sleep by that age. They can close their eyes and fall asleep. But kids don't really develop a fear of the dark until they're much older. And I think a lot of people see like a 2 or 3-year-old and they're like, oh my gosh, they're scared of the dark. They don't really even know what that is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. If you do want to do a night light because maybe they're getting up to use the potty at night or something like that, I always recommend a red light. Like a red-hued night light and dim as you can.
Okay.
Definitely not like a blue light. We all know that's not good for sleep, you know? But I try to say skip the night light if you can. Sometimes it even becomes like a power struggle with a kid. Like, oh, I want 2 night lights. I want a princess night light. Like, don't even go down that path.
Yes. And again, which kind of leads me into the excuses, and overcoming like the parent guilt, mom guilt. I'm a failure. I got it. All of a sudden, when it's bedtime, their stomach all of a sudden hurts. They're thirsty.
And I need a final snack. I got to go to the bathroom. Another book.
I tell parents to kind of navigate that.
It's hard. You kind of have to not be stern, but you got to keep consistent with what you're going to allow before bed, because we all know that kids, you get them an inch and they'll try to take a mile with that kind of thing. And so kids that have a really hard time with that, I like to tell parents, like, you can even do a pass. Like, they get a little card, and they can exchange their card for one bedtime thing.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, they get one extra tuck-in or one extra sip of water or something like that.
That's a good little incentive.
Even, a reward chart you could keep and say, if you stay in your bed after bed for 14 nights in a row, we could do a little something. And I like to use physical rewards, like, hey, we're also rested now, that we have extra energy, so we can go to the Sea Life Center or go to Chuck E. Cheese or something like that. Not like a, candy or something.
Yeah.
Usually it's not as...
Because then they're going to be hyped up again.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea, because kids like seeing the stars or the chore charts or things like that. So having kind of an incentive to stay in. What do you hear from families about some of the common reasons, or that just they're frustrated and they're calling you, and what have been some of your success stories?
I deal with a lot of people who, their kids have just started waking up every hour at night, and it's no longer sustainable. Maybe mom's going back to work. They don't know what to do anymore. And we all know that being a parent and being tired is so hard. And the sleep deprivation that comes from having a new baby is something you can't even begin to imagine until you've been in it. Yeah, it's like a whole different level.
It's a whole other level of...
It's not staying up late working on an exam. Like, this is way different. You're exhausted. And so people hit a breaking point. It's not good for your mental health. Sometimes I like to say, too, like, how do you think the baby feels waking up 9 times a night? They're not getting the undivided sleep either. And so a lot of people I get, they're just at the end of their rope. They don't know where to turn. They've maybe Googled how to fix my kid's sleep, and hundreds of different articles come up with different conflicting information. So the nice thing that I offer parents is I sit down with you one-on-one and give you a plan that you can follow. So it's literally a PDF with step-by-step instructions of what you're going to do every night for the next 14 days.
Okay.
So instead of Googling and putting things together, you have a consistent plan to follow. And that, I think, is really beneficial for people instead of just going off a cookie cutter,
Right.
thing
Trying
you
to
can
figure
find
something.
online. Yeah.
How important, I guess, would you stress for families that to follow that, to keep those boundaries, be consistent, otherwise you're probably just going to revert back to or not really have progress.
Yep.
Probably hurts us. It hurts us more than it does the kids. You know, you
Yeah.
got to take something from them or be a little bit more stern,
Yes.
but in the end,
Totally.
everybody's sleeping.
Yeah, consistency is key. I mean, I like to tell people the more times you deviate from the plan, the longer it's going to take.
Yeah.
And so to get the best outcome, just try to be consistent. And of course, nobody's perfect. You know,
Right.
when your baby is crying or something, all you want to do is go to them. That's a natural instinct of a parent. But in order to really have the best success, you got to be consistent, at least for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And it's not going to be like that forever.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
just so you get a handle on everything and kind of get on a good path.
What about, I know co-sleeping, or for a lot of kiddos, if they have a nightmare, they come jump in mom and dad's bed, or they just kind of have that, they just come in the room or the parents are going into their beds.
Yeah.
I'm sure, have you seen that where that's a very
Yes.
hard habit to break?
I've definitely seen that even with children going into their siblings' beds. That's another one I get a lot of the time for some reason,
yeah.
like into an older sibling's bed. Another big part of being a sleep consultant is we're really focused on safe sleep. That's something that's really, really important in my line of business. Something when I took the certification, they really, really stress. So I'm always big on the baby needs to be in their own sleep space on a flat, hard mattress with just a sheet. And, I don't like to advise people to co-sleep just because things happen, and that's not considered safe sleep. So we try to stay away from that. One thing I help a lot of people with is actually getting babies into their own crib in their own room and out of the parent's bed.
Yeah.
And then with older kids, they do like to come running in. I like to say, if a child is sick and you want to be close to them and you want to check on them at night and they want that comfort, try to sleep like on the floor next to their bed rather than getting in the bed with them or bringing them into your bed. So set out a little cot on the floor for a couple nights and sleep there nearby them.
Gotcha.
Because it's easier to remove yourself from the floor than it is to remove the child from your bed.
Yeah, and then they wake up and see you're leaving,
Yeah.
and then you're back to square one.
Yep. And then this is kind of a controversial thing around like people that advise about sleep, but for the toddler age, like my son is 4.5, I lock his door to his room at night and lock him inside, which sounds horrible, but it's a safety thing. Like if there was an emergency in the middle of the night, like a house fire, the firefighters need to know where he is.
Yeah.
And I need to know in a split second, where is he?
Yeah.
He can't be wandering around the house.
Yeah.
Or, kids get into things. He could get into the stove or something downstairs. So really, for an older toddler or younger toddler, they should be locked in their room by some means. And a lot of people prefer to put like a baby gate in front of the door so they can still open the door, but they can't get out.
Can't get out, yeah.
Just that physical barrier. With an elementary kid, it's a little bit different because
Right.
they're a little more
Yeah.
responsible. But with toddlers, they should really be contained when you're not consciously watching them because you never know what can happen. You have an earthquake,
Yeah.
something like that. You
And
need to
it's
know where they are.
Dark, and they can't navigate.
Yeah.
Bunk beds. I don't know. Is that
Yeah.
something too, like bedding, that you guys go through with these families
Yeah.
as a sleep consultant? Bunk beds, bedding, toddler beds, when to
Right.
transition them out of cribs and things
Yeah.
like that.
That's actually probably one of the number one things that I see parents have not done incorrectly, but done prematurely when I meet with people is the move from a crib to a toddler bed. I think a lot of people hear the name toddler bed and they think, oh, my baby's a toddler, I immediately move them into this bed. That is very far from the truth. They should stay in the crib as long as they possibly can.
Okay.
Until they are climbing out of that crib all by themselves, just leave them in there. Why
Yeah.
fix it if it's not
Yeah.
broken? I think the bed is so cute and they want to get like, a little
kid
sheet
room.
set.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Elsa matching.
Exactly. And it is cute, but there will be
Yeah.
a time for it. And
Yeah.
that time is not at 2 years old. That time is closer to 3.5, if you
Okay.
can keep them in that crib. It just helps them so much. They don't have that mental capacity to not jump out of their bed and start playing. They don't understand that until they're a little bit older. So I see a lot of parents move their kids early, and it really just spirals out of control. That's where you get a lot of these kids coming out of their rooms at night and knocking on the door a bunch of times. And if they were just in the crib, they wouldn't be able to do any of that, you know? So I always tell people, keep them in the crib as long as you can.
Because a lot of times, I'm assuming if they're in the crib and they wake up, they're just kind of looking around and they'll eventually, I mean, we do it as bored, adults. You just fall back asleep.
Yes.
You know, your body naturally does that.
Yep.
Weekend time is, you know, you mentioned about going to bed 7 or 8 early. Do you need to be consistent through the weekend? You know, in Alaska, everybody's out summer and camping.
I know.
You know, the body clocks kind of get all thrown off.
I try to have people be consistent, especially if you have children in daycare or something like that, and there's a schedule there. You want to try to stay as consistent as you can. I mean, a couple weekends a month where you go to the lake or something like that, and you stay out late, that's not going to ruin your progress. You know, just try to get back on it. Just try to stay as close as you can to your normal sleep schedule.
Gotcha.
Or when traveling, that's another one, you know.
Oh, yeah, airplanes.
Yeah.
And, oh, my goodness.
Yes.
And, you know, flying in and out of Alaska, it takes a whole day to get back on the sleep schedule. So what do you tell the parents to, like, giving themselves grace where they feel guilty? They feel like, I failed as a parent. They're never going to sleep. It starts affecting their relationship.
Yeah.
You know.
I would tell parents that be easy on yourself. Like, being a mom is so incredibly hard. We all know this. And baby and children's sleep is so confusing. And there's so much information out there that I myself, you know, I'm still learning new things. And this is what I focus on. And so, you know, be easy on yourself. Give yourself some grace. It'll all work out in the end. But, you know, there's things you can do in the meantime that will help.
And so you help families here in Alaska. So let folks know how the best way to get in touch with you, how that kind of process works for you.
So my website is alpenglowsleep.com. And on there you can see information. There's packages dictated by how old your child is. So you would go on there, pick out what age you're dealing with, and then basically I do an intake interview with the family, get all the details, you know. How many times does baby eat a night? You know, where's their sleeping situation? Are they in daycare? You know, is grandma watching them? What all the things, work everything out. And then I come up with a plan. It's a PDF document that literally gives you step-by-step instructions of what you're going to do. And then every day for 14 days, I check in with the family and say, okay, how did last night go? What do we need to change, you know? And kind of give them that moral support. We can tweak things slightly as we go. A lot of times the first week we'll work on overnight sleep. The second week we'll work on the nap. And then at the end of the 14 weeks, the kid is sleeping better.
Oh, that's good.
Or 14 days, I should say. Yeah, 14 weeks. That would take a long time,
It might take some 14 weeks. You never know. Do you find girls versus boys sleep better? Is that even a thing? Or just
I do not think there's any kind of, no.
Yeah.
You know, maybe when it comes to, like, potty training and sleep, you could see some differences because maybe a girl can go quicker at night, you know, something like that. But I deal with girls and boys equally, I would say.
Equally, gotcha. And nap times, when, you know, what would you say for age ranges of dropping naps? Because, you know, when they're tiny, they're sleeping all the time. Then they go to naps, and then some nap in preschool, some don't, some kindergarten. It's just kind of varies.
You know, it's tough. I feel like there's a wide range. You kind of have to base it off your child. Like, my son is 4.5, and he's in preschool, and he's the only one of his classmates that doesn't nap.
Oh.
And here I am as a sleep consultant, and he doesn't nap anymore.
So does he just hang out, or do you tell that to the teachers? Do you, okay, as part of what you do in your home?
Yep.
And that's okay to do that. So if you're listening, it's okay to say he doesn't need a nap.
Yep. And I had to be kind of, not firm with them, but, you know, I had to send them an email and be like, look, he doesn't need the nap. What options do you have? And I think as a parent, we have that ability. You know, you can ask for these things. You can ask for some accommodations to be made. You know, if they had a really hard time with it, of course, I would have let him take a nap. But they had a thing where they let him just work on coloring books. He has to lay on his mat for 30 minutes, and then he can work on coloring books and be, you know, quiet while the other kids nap. And his thing is, he will take a nap, but then he'll stay up until 10 or 11 at night. So you just have to kind of, like, see what's going on with your own kid, you know? Like, I started noticing he would just roll around in his bed for an hour or so at night, and I'm like, okay, he no longer needs that nap time, you know? And now without the nap, he goes right to sleep at 7:30, no problems, you know? Yeah. So it really depends. I think there's a wide age range of when they need to drop that nap. But keep it as long as you can. It's kind of like the toddler or the crib, you know? Don't fix it if it's not broken. Keep it as long as you possibly can because they need a lot of sleep.
Yeah. And what would you say, too, because, like, the white noise, I know for some, maybe parents would have a TV on in the kids' room for background noise, low, a little bit of light. Is that distracting, or kids kind of get used to that?
You know, I would say stay away from that if you can, only because we know that blue light is not beneficial for sleep. A lot of people have TVs in their kids' room, especially an older kid, that's probably fine. But I like to just get a white noise machine that you just plug in and it just on and off turns on a very loud stream of white noise that plays all night long.
My daughter has the blackout and the white noise.
Yeah, you got to do it.
I will say from experience, we, were pretty instrumental in getting her on a routine. And, we went through our little trial and errors.
Yeah.
But she's 8 now. She can put herself to bed. She can wake up with an alarm.
Yeah.
Like giving her that independence, getting ready. And so there is hope, and it's just such a great peace of mind, and I think gives them a sense of responsibility too. Like they're winning at doing something and kind of feel independent, even as little as they are.
Absolutely. I like those wake to sleep clocks where like a light will turn green. When they can get out of bed, because that gives them some agency of their own body, like you're talking about. So I recommend those for like a 4 and up, year old, where like it's turns red when they're not supposed to get out of bed, and then turns green when they can get out of bed. So they feel like they've got a little bit of control of the situation. Yeah. It's not mom having to get them out of bed. And that kind of gives them a little power that they like.
Yeah, no, that is so interesting. It's such a wonderful topic. Is there anything that I'm missing that I didn't ask that you, on this topic of being a sleep consultant? I know we'll have a way for folks to reach out to you, but I'll let you have the final thought or say anything you want to mention or add.
I would say just, anybody can reach out to me for help at any time. You don't have to sign up for a full package or anything like that. I love talking about this kind of stuff. So even if you have a question, like I've had people reach out to me about potty training questions. I just really loved all things in the kind of parenting realm. And I'm always happy to help, just a quick question here and there. And I'm there for you guys. I know sleep is hard, and we all deserve a good night's sleep.
We do, and maybe some adults can take some pointers too. Do you have mom and dad kind of listening?
I've had adults before be like, "Do you work with adults?" And I'm like, I have the same white noise machine for me because I like it. Yeah, and the blackout shades, we like those too as adults. So
and the darkness. I have friends that have insomnia, and I can't. And I'm a sleeper. I'm a nap. I mean, I have a crazy schedule.
Your schedule's weird.
And so a lot of people are like, "How do you do it?" And the best way that I can describe it to people is that I go, "Okay, well, what time do you wake up in the morning?" And they'll be like 7, and I go, "That's my 2:30 a.m. That's my body clock."
Wow.
Like my body clock is your 7 a.m. and then that kind of puts it into perspective.
Yes.
But I sleep in. I nap. That's just kind of doing this for here the last 10 years. I've just learned to kind of sleep in the pockets, but I can't even imagine someone with insomnia. That just must be, and let alone being a parent.
Yes.
That has to be just.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes having a baby that doesn't sleep well, this happened to me, can trigger insomnia too, because you're so on edge and so alert, like, oh my gosh, how bad is tonight going to be? Is it even worth going to sleep right now because he's just going to wake up?
The
anxiety. You get in that loop, and getting a good night's sleep is really good for postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum insomnia.
Yeah.
It helps all these conditions to just get some rest.
I did want to ask, and it just came to me, nightmares, like night terrors in kiddos. How do you handle that?
I think that's another one of those things, like being scared of the dark, where people think it's A, more common than it really is, and B, that it happens a lot earlier. Children actually don't experience nightmares until they're like 3 or 4 years old. So, with the younger kids, if they're waking up at night, I think people will chalk it up to nightmares, but it's not really that. It's probably something else, like maybe their room is too light or they don't know how to put themselves to sleep,
Gotcha.
But with the older kiddos, when they do have nightmares, I like, the parent needs to go in there. You need to go in. You need to comfort them. You can tell them that, everything's okay. I like to always tell my son, he just recently started having nightmares. I'll tell him, like, the things in place we have for safety. Like, oh, the dog is sleeping right outside your room. Mama's right next door. We have an alarm set on the house. There's nothing to worry about. Like, physical, real things that are there in place that he can see with his own eyes, I feel like really helps. I try to tell parents to stay away from, like, the monster spray. I don't know if you've ever heard of people doing that.
What is the monster spray?
It's literally just, like, water in a bottle, and it's, like, labeled monster spray, and parents will be like, oh, don't worry, I'm spraying away the monsters.
Because then you'll wake up and everything's wet because they probably sprayed.
Or it's like you're feeding into that fear.
That's true.
Then you're acknowledging
telling them there's monsters.
There are monsters, and you need this spray or something might happen. Like, It's better to be like, there's no such thing as
Okay.
monsters. The house is all
Reassure
locked up.
what you have in place in your home. Okay.
Rather than being like, well, there is monsters, and here's how we're going to take care of
So
them.
when you see them open,
Yeah.
That's funny. That I didn't think about that. So.
Yeah, so try to be logical and realistic about, the nightmares.
Last thing, self-soothing.
Yeah.
Sucking the thumb, pacifiers, things like that.
Yeah.
Is that a good part of helping them in with the dark curtains, white noise?
Yeah.
It'll help them sleep?
Totally. I am actually this is something people don't understand about sleep consultants is I'm a big fan of sleep props like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that they can use by themselves to go to sleep, I'm a big fan of. Whether that's a lovey, a special blanket, a pacifier, sucking their thumb, outside of the fact where it's having some kind of dental impact, but that would be, between you and your dentist, Anything that they can do themselves to soothe themselves at night, I'm 100% on board with. Things that would be considered counterintuitive would be like making them a bottle or picking them up and rocking them every time.
Okay.
But if they can just pop their own pacifier in, that's all for the better.
Gotcha.
Mom's not involved.
Yeah.
Or if they have a special lovey, they can just snuggle. Good for them. That's
My
extra
dog,
helpful.
Yeah, she has 20 stuffies,
Yeah.
but they're all her little friends and hang out with her, and we put them around her and like, all right,
Yeah, if that
I guess
helps
feels
her.
like their little comfort,
Yeah.
not being alone,
Yeah.
so to speak. So.
I would say only if something like that became a problem, where if she was asking you like 5 times a night to come in and rearrange
Right.
the stuffies, then I'd be
Yeah.
like, okay, we need to whittle this down to like 2 stuffies per
Yeah.
night. But if you're not
Yeah,
having to
no.
intervene, whatever provides them comfort and within a safe, type
Yeah.
of boundary
Gotcha.
too. Yeah.
You need to be able to breathe.
You need to be able to breathe, especially with babies. Like, you're not going
Yeah.
to throw like a quilt in
yeah.
their bed to help them. But a
Yeah.
pacifier, totally on board with that. Or a thumb sucking, totally
Okay.
on board with it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, some great information. I know a lot of folks out there listening will learn a lot. Again, Molly Penney with Alpenglow Sleep.
Yep.
So you can find her online. Check her out. So thank you so much for coming
Yes,
on. We
thank you
appreciate
for having
it.
me. I was happy to talk about this.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. And don't forget to like and subscribe.